Hey guys, Kara with Synergic Fit.
And Tori and Wellman with Wellman Wellness Training.
I know it's been a while, but we're back at it again for the first of the year Mindset Monday.
We are.
What are we going to get into?
I think it's important to reflect on the year that has been, and it's been a very crazy year. A lot of the topics we talked about were kind of, in depth of what was going on last year in respects to our mindset, our lens that we use. We didn't actually recap on the events of what has allowed us to get to that space, or allowed us to get to that mindset, and in turn execute the habits or the choices that we were making. So we wanted to kind of build in a recap for the Mindset Monday and really talk about how important it is to reflect and then essentially let go and make decisions that allow us to continue to progress in the direction that has been, I guess, laid forth before us.
All right. Well, let's get into it then.
Yeah, let's do that.
Just quick Cole's Notes version for me. The beginning of last year was actually quite a shit show for myself. And it took a lot of hard truths and a lot of understanding and, I don't know, overall just getting out of my own way to kind of get to the point that I've gotten to. Had I not put myself in the uncomfortable position of moving in a different direction, I even probably wouldn't have ended up in mentorship with this one. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I've always kind of been connected or pretty consistent on the trajectory I wanted, but events have definitely, I guess, changed how I've approached that, and how consistent or how committed I've been to that. And last year was a big example of, when you're fostering relationships or you're spreading yourself too thinly and not focusing inward, you can find a lot of deflection, or you can find a lot of failure, if you will, that can change the trajectory, your focus, and your commitment to what you totally want to accomplish. I spent a lot of time last year trying to foster relationships with others without cleaning up the relationship that I needed to have with myself in respects to some of the past events that were accumulating and causing stress and feeling like I had lost stuff or lost people. And that was festering, not only in my choices to find, I guess, similar people, but it was also assuring my position on whether it was right to trust people or trust myself. And that was something that just kept replaying itself. But to my credit, and something that I'm definitely proud of, or I'm definitely happy about, was even amongst all those events, I really chose self-growth and self-mentorship. I took a lot of courses that were asking me to take events and place them in a neutral setting or a neutral position, and really asked me to analyze what I truly wanted, what I truly believed in. And it really shifted my lens and gave me another perspective, or another connection towards my higher purpose or my higher self, which I kind of lost touch with amongst the personal relationships and obviously everything that's been happening over the course of the last year or so. So, I mean, if you were to Cole's Notes that, I would say relationships are important. I really had to foster a better relationship with myself and be aware of the energy or the vibe that I was creating and the vibe that was around me. And if I didn't learn what I needed to learn, those same vibes, those same frequencies, or those same people would end up showing up again. And I was given so I was given another example of what can work and what won't work. So it's really helped me dial in again what my purpose is, and to build more awareness around how I show up for people and how people are showing up for me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you said that. It's like you had to trust yourself, and I think that's the biggest thing, is we put so much external validation on other people's perceptions of us.
Yes.
And so we don't even trust ourselves because we don't know how to trust ourselves, because we've been trusting everybody else to tell us what we should trust.
Or what our value is.
Yeah, and so in terms of that, it's interesting that you do say that, because even when I first started working with you, it was like, yeah, you were mentoring me on a little bit more of my business side of things, because I think like I had a good trajectory of what I wanted to do and where I was going, and I had some of the key systems in place. I just wasn't fully there, and I was already kind of hopping into a little bit more like my spirituality and leveling up that way. And in terms of that, it was even just like getting you uncomfortable in some things and making you think about things in different ways that you weren't necessarily ready to. So
for sure.
Yeah, the whole mentor turning into mentee kind of thing is always interesting too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say on that level of it, maybe more so how you dove into some of those aspects, or began that soul searching and trying to find how you trusted yourself. How were you stepping into your own power, and like what was it that maybe helped you gain that traction?
Are you asking that as a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. Great leaders ask great questions. I don't think I really had the answers, and the biggest thing was surrendering to that, coming to terms with that.
Yeah.
And the same way Carrie had reached out to myself for mentorship, and the same way I had other examples in my life where mentorship really served me, I had to step back into that choice and step back into that unknown or the uncomfortable aspects of seeking mentorship for dealing with events, dealing with loss, learning relationships. So it wasn't really something that was within my power at first. I had to surrender to courses. I took a course that literally talked about events and how they're neutral, and fostering better relationships and communication with yourself, and really tapping into the purpose of your why and why you're here, and trying to live your body, or observe your lens, or observe your life as a person who's living a spiritual, I guess, existence. I got that through the Integrity Seminars company. At the beginning of the pandemic, when you sought out my mentorship, there was a lot of spare time, or a lot of free time, and I was tapping into podcasts from Tony Robbins and people, like-minded people who were talking again about events and having control of your emotions, because we are creatures of habit, and our habits will really dictate our results. Not only that, but our input really truly will. So I had to get comfortable being uncomfortable, jumping into spaces where I knew I was good at certain things, but I'd allowed that to just govern my life and govern my habits. And most of us do that because it's easier to sit in a space of ego and pride, as opposed to jumping into the unknown and growing our purpose, or growing our influence, and growing our, I guess, value, if you will. So I kept moving and maneuvering like that. I mean, some people would call that excessive masculine energy, and you kept saying to me, are you tapping into your feminine energy or your femininity and stuff like that? So those were some of the things that I really had to, I guess, dial down and be consistent with, was not allowing my ego and pride to stop the vulnerability that needed to happen in order to grow into my why and my purpose. And the funny thing is, with that, and even just sharing in my Coles notes and now digging deeper, it started to provide value for even those bad instances or those bad relationships. There was value in learning that could be happening from that could continue my trajectory or reaffirm it, or help me pivot in a way that I really needed to see. And if I wouldn't have experienced that, I wouldn't have been able to see that to its fruition. And likewise, for the people that were part of those things and part of those events, hopefully I bestowed some type of value to them. And moving forward, whether we reconnect at any moment, there'll be a reflection at that point, and we'll be able to meet again and be like, did you grow from this, or did it help you, go to some place, or was it more like we weren't meant to be because you're still there and I'm up here, vice versa, right? So that was a good question. I think being comfortable, being uncomfortable is something that really helps us grow and change. And you don't get that until you've experienced it. And now, as we're sitting here coming around full circle, reflecting. So that would be, something that I would say has really helped me in this whole situation. I guess the question goes right back to you. What would you say and basis of the reflection of the year, getting more in depth. What were some of the things that really stand out for you in respects to the growth or the trajectory that you truly need to embrace and you really want to move in?
Good question. Yeah, I would definitely say at the beginning of the year, I had really started tapping into a lot of podcasts and a lot of reading. I had a lot of like hard conversations and I guess inward reflection of how I may be acting in certain situations, because by no means am I perfect. So it took some of that. I don't think I really tapped into the fuller consciousness of it until maybe about April, May, when I started working on a spiritual course myself. And I think that kind of like further kickstarted it, because it actually got me to look into my masculine energy, which is probably why I started bringing it up to you a little bit more.
Correct.
But I think society as a whole is very deeply into its masculine energy, and everything is scheduled. Everything needs to be done at a certain time. You have to plan, and if it doesn't go to plan, then everything goes to shit, and there's fires to put out, and you're constantly stressed. And
it's always based on like an impulsive, feral construct.
yes and no, because I even found when I started to tap into, I guess, the feminine side of it, I was letting go of things. Things didn't need to be as scheduled or as hard or as, I don't know, just planned in general. So as soon as I started to let go and just flowed with some of that, that was me working through life and accepting things as they were coming.
For sure.
Because I grew up very reactive to things, and
Yes.
I also learned that from my family. Conditioning from a child is part of your childhood traumas, just so you know.
Absolutely, that's what I learned from that course.
So yeah, really tapping into a lot of the things that I thought I had dealt with at an earlier age, and I had not. They were still sitting there subconsciously. So this was a big year for me to just tap in to a lot of that inward reflection and understand that the way I reacted in certain situations was actually conditioning from a past trauma response. And
Big breakthrough.
that was a huge thing to look at. So I really took this time and this year for myself to understand myself more, because if I didn't understand myself, I didn't know my self-worth, I didn't love myself, I didn't see the bigger picture for myself per se. So I definitely took the year to find that out for myself, being put on that trajectory and understanding, I guess, the fuller, bigger picture of things. I needed something more, and I hopped into shamanism, and I hopped into a few other things, hopped out of a few other things. I just found that there are certain things that weren't operating with my alignment, and I found that it was taking me off that trajectory, and it wasn't necessarily meant for me, but it was something that I had to learn. I had to push myself to see how far I could go.
Yes.
And when it wasn't serving me any longer, I had to have enough power within myself to let go of it.
Yes.
So yeah, hopefully that answers that question.
It really does. I mean, I think a lot of us, our programming or, indoctrination, maybe a strong word, but the measure of success is to have that streamlined effect where you go to school, get a job, it pays you a certain income, and that's a measure of success that we all sit in. With that, it doesn't allow for that frequency or that wiggle room and that acceptance of having experiences, and in turn those growing us as people. If we were to dig deeper into that, I think the value that we've all been provided with the landscape or the magnitude and the, I guess, intensity of the events that we've seen and now carrying over into 2021, your measure or your purpose and your why is directly connected to the input that you allow. And there's never been such a measure of, I would say, like good and evil in the world, where we're really uncovering the truth. And I think the truth really can set a lot of people free. But the most ironic thing about all that situation is you need to experience things to find those said truths. So I guess a big shout out goes to myself and all the people that participated in relationships with me, or, you know, was participating in, you know, a relationship at distance, maybe online, whatever that may look like. Those all provided value, and without all the things going on and all of us really paying attention to those things and magnifying the essence of that, I don't think we would have ever come around to see those set value points. And there's still some people who are sitting and kind of almost blocking the value and blocking the learning from that, and they're just allowing that energy to just fester and create more fear and uncertainty and stress, you know, upon them. And unfortunately, that is another thing I've learned through the reflection is the more you fester or sit with that, the more it shows up as your vibe and your frequency.
Yeah.
And those things can cascade or snowball effect. So even as hard as it's been in respects to our industry and the stress behind it, and quite frankly, the, you know, accumulative evidence that suggests that some of this stuff is seeming a little wonky, and some of our leadership should be questioned, not only for their motives, but what they're actually doing in their habits. With all that sitting there, it's important that your input stays on the trajectory of where you want to go. And even if it drifts a little bit, you do have to have a little bit of acceptance and forgiveness for yourself and all the people experiencing or providing that set input that is taking you away from that set trajectory. It's all part of the journey. It's all meant to be, you know, in the direction or in the platform that it's going. But remember that you always have a choice to participate or jump out of. And if you are choosing to participate, there's going to be consequences around that, and owning up to that is really important. Mm-hmm. That is something that I would really like, I guess, finalize, or I'd really grab and move forward with in my life, is anything that I've decided to participate in, anything that's been an input in my life has had an influence on my trajectory and how I show up and how I communicate. Mm-hmm. And I have to take ownership of that. Mm-hmm. But in the same context, ironically as it is, it's all out of my control. There's only certain things you can control, and that's something I've also had to come to terms with. With that being said, I think moving forward, as we reflect, it's important and imperative that we do find the truth. And I will say this again, I would really start questioning some things that are going on, you know, in our day-to-day life from our leadership group and who they represent and their connections and why these things are playing out in the way they are. Because I think it's important that we all have a conversation behind that. It has definitely changed the trajectory of my business, my landscape, my lens, and my purpose. And I'm pretty sure my friend here has a little bit of that influencing her choices as well. And I think just sitting back idly and not talking about it, and not making a stand or asking questions or allowing it to change our input, or allowing it to foster habits of, I guess, consistency and a little bit of urgency, would be something that may not necessarily serve you in the long run, or maybe risky in the long run. I think it's time that we really start talking about these things and, you know, letting it push us to a purpose or an action, a massive action, you know, sooner rather than later. Because I know I feel convicted in that space or that sense. Everything that I covered last year, everything that I experienced last year is cultivated into what we're seeing in front of us. And it's placed a sense of urgency, but also a sense of acceptance, you know, beyond where I'm currently at and where I'm going to go. Mm-hmm. It's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, I like where you touched on the whole being out of control of things. The worst thing that we can do for ourselves is get upset when we aren't able to control things. But at the end of the day, the only thing you can control is yourself, your reactions, or how you don't react, for that matter. Mm-hmm. Every time you choose to be emotionally involved with something and say overreact or put your perception or your expectation on someone, yes, is when you're doing yourself and that person a disservice, because you're not actually letting things necessarily be natural or just flow in the state of whatever it is. We're so keen to put labels and fit people into boxes, because if we don't have said label for them, then we don't know what it is. But the thing that we're forgetting is the only way to actually truly understand people is to actually sit and have those vulnerable conversations. And I will say that is the thing that I truly am grateful for over even the last few months, is the people that I have connected with, who have come into my life in whatever respect, whether that's relationships, friendships, acquaintances. Like, it's been a very good conversation and understanding with people, because if there is any issues, or even if there isn't, it's been this open conversation set of things where we speak to things and we can understand, but at the same time we can ask questions. And I don't necessarily need to agree with anyone at any point, but I'm willing to see their side of things or understand where they're coming from, and then we can either choose to change our outlook, or we can remain steadfast to what we're doing, but we've still understood that person from a different perspective. And so taking that time to have those vulnerable conversations, to understand people and actually connect, has been quite enjoyable for me.
Yeah, it's funny how our synergy connects when she shares with that. This just reminds me of what I was just touching base on. The level of transparency that you can emit, or the level of transparency that you show up for people, really allows the teamwork and I guess the dreams to work. So as she said that really sparked those things, and reminds me that I always recommend for people to show up in their true authentic self. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've really been, I guess, more attached to and more in tune with. Mm-hmm. The courses and the reflection of 2020 have reinforced that importance, and to remove myself, totally in depth or totally immersed into what is considered a measure of success or societal norms, where we attach ourselves so much to labels. Mm-hmm. And with labels comes expectations. Mm-hmm. And you're still fostering, you're showing up in an energy of ego and pride in that, because you're bragging about your material worth and how much money you're making, and you measure those things as a value for somebody, as opposed to, can they have conversations? Are they listening to what I have to say? Are they trying their best to show up for me and listening to my needs and wants? And on top of that, are we pushing each other in a trajectory that's going to foster success for us, which should be fostering or working towards love, gratitude, acceptance, and empathy. We don't get enough of that in society. It's more just instant gratification. It's more just instantaneous, flashy stuff, and impulsive, I guess, feral and physical, attraction. Which can only take us so far, but can leave us feeling a little empty. And I think, again, with all the magnitude of events going on, because we've had so much time on our own, I think a lot of people have had the opportunity, and hopefully have followed in a sense of finding what their true purpose is, and their higher self, their higher purpose, and their higher spirituality, because they've had a little bit of extra time to do that with the impending lockdowns and the pandemic and stuff. I know I have had an opportunity to do that, and it's been very beneficial for me. So it's been pretty wild. Mm-hmm. It's been pretty... Understatement. Yeah, it's been pretty reflective. It's been interesting to see how people are pivoting, but at least it's given us a little bit more clarity on which direction we want to continue to move in, and who our tribe's going to be. And we're not going to, I guess, connect with everybody. We're not going to serve everyone. Mm-hmm. But I've become more comfortable with that conversation, and more clear on what those people that I will connect with, or what my tribe should look like. Mm-hmm. So that's been very beneficial for me.
I think that all comes down to your own authenticity. It's like when you learn and understand more about yourself, you're not as keen to hide those things that you feel shameful about. For sure. You're more open about it. And I think that's where I understood most of my experience this year, was the more open and the more I spoke to the things that happened for me along the way, was when I actually created that greater connection with people, and they understood me from a deeper level, because I was willing to be that vulnerable.
Yes.
And I think that also comes to, like, even from a coaching perspective, is we expect these people to be so vulnerable with us, but if they don't know half of the shit that we've done, then it comes off as like almost domineering in a way. Yes. It's like, you don't know what I've gone through and you're expecting me to say, lay all of my shit out for you, but it's like there's not that trust level.
Yeah.
So regardless of whether that's coaching or your friendships or like any of that, the more vulnerable I've been, the more authentic I've been to myself.
Correct.
The more other people have aligned with what I say or what has resonated for them. So.
And that's awesome. It might change the trajectory or the type of, I guess, people that are entering your life and sticking around, and even on your business side of things and what the clients look like. And I've definitely felt that. That's what I mean by relationships. Those things have definitely changed. Any closing statements?
I think I would just say take a moment and reflect on what it was that was maybe a challenge for you this last year, or what you were able to take from said challenges and turn it around. Like, what did you find for yourself that maybe insurmountably changed once you actually took a different mindset to things?
Absolutely. What were the events that were there that really helped you get there, or really helped you make those changes? Was it consequences? Was it success? Whatever you measured it up as during those events, maybe have a chance to reflect. My closing statement would be, with that said reflection, moving into the new year, are you fostering habits or allowing your input to now change the trajectory and helping your output with the measures of success that you've drawn up for yourself in respects to goals, your relationships, your health, your wellness? Are you making those decisions yet? Do you even have the answers for that? And if you don't, are you going to surrender to seeking out mentorship and seeking out guidance in that area that you definitely need help with? And also, I mean, I've been pretty moved by everything going on, because I do truly feel that as I've changed my perspective and I've changed my focus, or really dialed into my spirituality or dialed into my purpose and my why, allowing that input to come from the proper sources is super important. And I would really start asking questions for the magnitude of everything going on in respects to the pandemic, because it is greatly affecting us, and the isolation is not allowing us to foster or fester our proper human experience. And I would challenge people to maybe look into the input as to why this is happening in the first place. And is it completely affecting you to the point where you've changed your trajectory so much that you're simply not living? You're simply not experiencing. Have you used this as another excuse not to get yourself, in good shape again, to, reach out to that person where you had a little bit of issues with, to speak your truth at work? Has all these distractions or this fear and uncertainty distracted you enough that you aren't following your purpose or your why? And if it is, can you change your input? Can you change the mentorship or the information that's coming in to allow you to somehow pivot a little bit, but still keep you on the right trajectory, so you can be successful and show up happy, fulfilled, loved within yourself and the other people that are in your lives, immediate family and your network of friends and relatives, or whatever that may look like. If that is affecting you enough that you are just not participating in life, I'd really ask you to maybe change the input or ask questions, because with the questions, it's allowed me to kind of pivot where I need to go. I mean, I enjoy training. I think there's more value with the magnitude of everything going on, to provide a voice of influence, not only in training, but lifestyle habits and the truth of information that needs to be out there. Because a lot of us are stressed and uncertain and confused and have a lot of anxiety and fear behind what we've been known to believe is our reality. And from that said reality, the leadership groups that have been set in place aren't providing us a way out of it. And unfortunately, some of their information is also coming out where it's quite, demeaning and disturbing. They don't have our best interests involved. So I think that's become more of a trajectory for me, to speak more of that truth and to sit in that space of transparency. For me, that's important for me to kind of embrace, if you will. And I look forward to sharing more information about that, and still obviously providing a very, strong, methodical, empathetic base of support, philosophy, and execution for training, because I think it's important. It's never been more important to take care of your health and wellness when we're secluded indoors and the constant input is fear, anxiety, and less exercise. It's going to have an effect on our health and our wellness. We're sitting at home all day, not able to move. So having a pivot or having an adaptable training paradigm for that is super imperative, I think, moving forward. And that's where someone like myself and Carrie can really provide value, and we can grow as people and as trainers too. We've been provided a bit of an opportunity, but in the same context, it's important to ask questions to allow you to get more clarity on the trajectory that you really want to go on. So that'll be my closing comment.
Alrighty.
Would you guys love to share? I mean, we love to hear from you guys. We can always get value. If our relationship has proven anything, just because I may have started in the label of mentor doesn't mean that you can't get mentoring from somewhere else. And that's the power of relationships. So we're definitely looking for some feedback from you guys in respect to where you had some growth and where we could learn from you guys and the best ways to serve you, and maybe you can serve us. So feel free to share with us. It'd be great knowledge, great connectivity, and great success principles that we can move with, moving forward. So thanks for tuning in today. Mindset Monday, first of the year 2021. Let's make it our best year.